Well, greetings, blade lovers. Greetings, fixed blade custom knives lovers. I have something very special for you today, and I know that I say that a good deal of the time. Today, it has a special meaning because this is a custom creation by Ken Vihikite of Blackrock Knives. He makes some very interesting, unusual, and outstanding blades. This one is a recent creation in that the model hadn't been out there except for the past few months or so. He calls this the Virus. And it is very similar to another knife that he has created. Not very similar, but shares the same handle, that is called the Voodoo. Trying to think of all the names. So let's go over this and maybe talk about some of the intended uses. It's a dedicated tactical type knife for those that understand and employ a particular type of knife technique called Pikal or Pakal, Filipino term for jab or stab. But what I want to point out is some of the fantastic faceting. Ken calls it texturing, that he puts on both the blade and the handle. This is 01 tool steel, by the way. He heat treats and tempers himself. I believe he says they're oil quenched. He has what appears to be, looking at his Instagram feed, his own oven, very large and fancy affair for even heating. There's the symbol he puts on, the biohazard symbol, with this being called the Virus. The blade is hardened to 58 to 59 Rockwell, I asked him. And that's about right for 01, although 01 can be hardened more. And I would recommend looking up 01 on Knife Steel Compositions, a very good app on your either iOS or Android device. I love the handle because it's not only ornate but very useful. Look at that bird's beak. Literally looks like a bird, right? With the head, the big eye, and the beak. That bird's beak style is something that is used quite a bit on many of the swords coming from the Philippines and Indonesia, wherein that hooks into the finger. So if we're holding it this way, and it can be held with the edge up, point forward, or edge down, or edge in, point down, as I'll show you in a minute. But look at how he's accommodated the hand. Now my hand is medium large. I saw Ken holding this. His hand is quite large. And it's comfortable for both of us. There's a choil where you can choke up. And the knife can be useful in a utilitarian fashion for cutting forward and upward. But as you can see, obviously for combat use, it can go in and up. It can come across in both directions, as we use in the Philippine knife tactics. It's a gray G10 with, I believe he uses G10 pins of varying colors, and he can make up a knife handle so that it looks, it's got any color G10, any color pins, and so forth. Now where this knife is really meant to be used, and yes, notice it is a chisel grind, so we've got a grind on one side, flat on the other, very much along the lines of what Ernest Emerson has done with many of his knives, and a number of other makers use. It's plenty sharp, and quite razor sharp actually, the way it came, for its intended use. It's not meant to be slicing paper. And look at the offset of the blade. So this is very much in what recently has been called the Elvia. That's Ed Calderon's fighting style with the fruit knife. And you notice that the angle of the blade is cocked off from the line of the handle by maybe 30 degrees, 25 degrees, something like that. The hole here can be used for a lanyard, I'm sure, but also gives you a pinch grip for manipulating the knife, should you want to do that. Whether or not that was intended, I'm not sure. But let me back out a little bit. Notice that holding it in the point down position, you have the perfect lock for your thumb over that even ramp of the pommel. And this locks your hand right in. You cannot slide down with that pinky being in there and the thumb over the top. And so this is meant to be used in this downward ripping fashion. It can also be used in a jabbing fashion like that. There is the maker's mark, ROC, for black rock. And look at the fantastic faceting. Now, what Ken tells me he does is he blackwashes the entire blade without the handle. Then he tumbles it to get those facets to highlight on the ridges. Yes, you need to take some care in using this knife, but going back as far as Randall and earlier, custom makers have used 01, and it's a great forging steel as well, although this is not a forged knife, this is a stock removal knife. We won't call this jimping again, we'll call that texturing. But how interesting is that all the way around, and all the way along the flat, if you will, and then we've got a swedge here. But we have a high flat grind here, and I'm going to assume it's flat. Let's see. Really does feel like a flat, although working on a curve like that, it could have a little bit of curve in there, a little bit of hollow. I'm not sure if there's a way to really measure that, but looking along that plane of that grind, it's mostly flat. Certainly the back edge is flat. Back side is flat. Okay, so we're going to get into some measurements and some comparisons. I have to say, this is my first custom knife in a long while. In the distant past, I owned a number of custom knives by makers such as Crawford, Terzola, Pardue. 8 inches exactly from the point to the pommel. The blade edge is listed and is exactly 3 inches. The blade is, I'd say, 3.6. Although you don't really have the sharpened portion going back to the handle. Thickness wise, and it'll be a little bit of a challenge to see if we can get the stock of the blade. Yeah, I guess I can up here. Let's see. Kind of angle that for you. So 3.6 millimeters. And handle stock, or handle thickness, 0.51, half an inch. So as you can see, for a fixed blade knife, it's relatively thin, but you've got the contouring and you've got the height in the handle, not extremely high, but enough to get a very good grip on. And this will work extremely well with gloves as well. And finally, let's get a weight on it. I just realized I haven't even shown you the Kydex sheath yet, which is amazing in its own right. It's a relatively light knife. It's 5.1 ounces and a fixed blade knife. Now let's bring out this work of art. This urban camo style of Kydex sheath. It is extremely well handmade. And this clip, although it's not a tech lock, it's not as bulky as a tech lock, you don't really need it. This slips into the waistband and over the belt and locks in very firmly, believe me. The fit is very firm, little bit of movement there. So I suppose if you're sneaking up on somebody, that might mean something to you. Or if you're somehow using this out in the woods hunting, and I don't think you probably would, unless you're planning on defending yourself against a bear attack or something. But anyway, it is a great fit. Now here's the thing. It would seem as though you'd grab it and want to pull it out, but if you try it that way, and this is maybe one of my only pet peeves, although this looks so nice and fits so well in the Kydex sheath, you're not going to be able to grab it and pull it out that way. But you've got this hook to help you, you've got this to help you, or you could just grab the handle, and it does not stick in there, believe me. In front of the camera it's a bit of a challenge, but hold it back here, you can definitely push it right off without any problem. And let's look at just the sheath for a moment again. It's a great thickness. It is well put together. It is well molded. It is molded just enough to hang on to the handle and the choil. No worries about that coming out of the sheath. It's just not going to shake out on its own. So should you decide, and it's a bit heavy for it, to hang it around your neck, you could use some of these holes here to lash your paracord to or whatever. But it's a great compact package in the sheath as well. Now, I'm not sure if this was the inspiration. Again, this virus has a lot of the profile of the Elvia knife. Now here's another one fairly recently coming out from Bastinelli Knives, the Anomaly, which was co-designed by Bastian Cove and Doug Markita. You notice? Very, very similar blade, although smaller, and angle offset. Now this is a skeletonized, not really skeletonized, but bare bones, no handle, hideout type tactical knife, used in the same manner, but you have a ring. So it's an anomaly because it's part karambit and part, I'll have to keep calling it Elvia, since Ed sort of trademarked that name, named after his mother's fruit knife. Now, for comparison only, whole different style knife, there is the recently reviewed by me Tamashii by Civivi, designed by Bob Trezzola. I got it out there just for size comparison. You can see it's definitely a longer blade, definitely larger or longer overall. Whole different style of knife. More of a straightforward traditional tanto with a swedge. Really, really nice. And this design goes back to like the 80s. I had one custom by Mr. Trezzola. And I suppose just for size comparison, here is a Griptilian. And look at that. Griptilian's actually a longer blade than the Virus. Not specialized in the same way by any means. So let me know what you think. I've taken a little extra time on this review because it certainly deserves it. Ken has been a stellar individual to work with. I would recommend watching the interview that was done on the Knife Junkie back in, I think, early, like February maybe, of 2020 or 2021. Since then, Ken had suffered a stroke, and that's not a secret. A lot of people know that. And has worked his way back to an incredible level through his own determination and hard work. And, you know, God bless him. He's doing a fantastic job. If you check his Instagram channel, you're going to see new models out all the time. And I have to say, the turnaround on this, and this is a $300 item, okay? It is a custom knife, handmade completely. And you can see some of his progress shots on the knives that he makes. His turnaround was pretty fantastic. I think it was only like 3 weeks, which for a custom knife is just nuts. So I'm not committing him to that and saying that that's going to be someone else's experience. It's going to depend on the model, the readiness, and if whether he's maybe already got one in, you know, profiled out and ready to go. All right, so special tactical knife. The Virus by Blackrock Knives and maker Ken Vehicate. Hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe. This Old Sword, signing out.